my name is Adriana, and today I'm camping. There is a very loud creek behind me, but we will do our best to bring down the level of the creek and increase the level of my voice. Hopefully it all works out okay. I am a huge weekend camper. I love going camping basically every weekend in the summer. As soon as it gets above 90 in my town where I live, me and my husband are escaping to the woods where it's cooler because I don't handle the heat well. But it's perfect temperature here. It was a little misty this morning. We did some hiking. It's great. I love it. So as someone who does a lot of camping, I also do a lot of reading while camping. And I've kind of been trying to distill down what makes the perfect camping read. And I've come up with a couple categories. So one, I think it needs to be fairly short. Even if you are just like a relaxation camper, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to happen. It takes a lot longer to cook food. It takes a lot longer to wash dishes, building fires. There's a lot to be done. And so your time is actually fairly limited when you're camping, even if you're not going out and hiking, dirt bike riding, doing some sort of major activity. A good camping read needs to be 300-ish pages, I would say would be a good number to strive for. Also, I think a camping read needs to be light. And I mean that in that you don't want anything too heavy. Like, you're out in the woods enjoying your life and you don't want a book to be bringing you down on that vibe. So those are kind of my two criteria for a camping read. And those are definitely vague enough that you could fit a lot of different books in there. So I've come up with this list of recommendations from basically all the genres I tend to read. And I have one book per genre that I typically read, as well as some honorary mentions throughout. So the first genre I'm going to start with is definitely more of a subgenre, but because it's something that does take up a large part of my reading, I'm gonna separate it out, and that is Greek mythology. So my Greek mythology recommendation for camping is you have to go to the queen of vibey Greek mythology retellings, and that is Jennifer Saint. Specifically, I am going to recommend Atalanta and then have Ariadne as like an honorary mention. But Atalanta, I think, just works so well for camping, especially since the first third of the book is basically Atalanta just camping. So it's a great match. It is a match made in heaven. If you are a Greek mythology fan and you're going out for a weekend camping trip, bring this book along with you, set up your hammock between two trees, and just sit down, bust through it. The next genre I'm going to hit is historical fiction. And for this genre, I'm going with Dragon Teeth by Michael Crichton. This follows two archaeologists in the 1800s, basically competing against each other to find more fossils out in Montana. And I don't know what it is about archaeology, but it just feels very like summery and like vibey to me. I love an archaeology book, and I think this one is one of Michael Crichton's shorter novels, so that works well too. This is actually the novel that my husband has been reading while camping, and he really enjoys it, and he is not a reader. I read it a few years ago and adored it. It is just a great book that involves a lot of like difficult camping, but I think it's just fun, and you learn a lot about old-timey archaeology. The two archaeologists you follow were real people, so you're following kind of a dramatized version, although I don't think it's really that dramatized version of their rivalry, which is very, very fun. The next genre we're going with is one of my personal faves, fantasy, and I think this one was fairly no-brainer for me. I went with Piranesi. I know a lot of people put this in as like a fall recommendation, but I think it also really works as like a transitional kind of seasonal read. So if you're in that kind of late summer, early fall camping trip, where it's a little bit cooler, but you're still by some water. You know, school is probably about to start or has just started. You're getting into that little bit of academic feel. But in Piranesi, we have a man living in a labyrinth, and the labyrinth is a lot of kind of ocean theming to it. So especially if you're camping like by the ocean, great pick. Great read, very short. You can get through it very, very quickly. I actually read this book while we were camping across the street from where we are camping now and loved it. I do have an honorary mention for this category as well, and that is the Dragonheart Legacy series by Nora Roberts. Very light, very fun. There are some stakes, but you never feel like the stakes are really that high. So they're short, they're fun, they're quick. I think they'd make an excellent camping read. The next genre I'm gonna go with is literary fiction. And due to the nature of this genre, it was a little difficult for me to find a book that really fit the theme. I think most literary fiction is literary because it's a little bit heavier, a little bit more cerebral, if you could say, and a lot of them are really long. But I did find one that I think would be really, really fun to read, you know, again, in the hammock or in a chair by the fire or in a chair by the creek, and that is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This book is basically the fever dream of an old man recounting his fight with a tuna. Like, it sounds insane, and it kind of is, but I love it for that. It's just this old man in Cuba who's been fishing for 50 years. He's starting to decline in his, you know, abilities and capabilities, and he gets this one last big tuna to bite on his line. And it's great. It's very much a book about, you know, man versus nature, how we interact, and especially if you're out camping, that is something that is very prevalent in your mindset. Next up is nonfiction, and this, just like the last category, doesn't necessarily lend itself to camping unless you have a specific niche, like hiking guidebook or something along those lines. But I think, you know, kind of my theming of camping read, I think one of the best ways you can go is like the memoir of a comedian you love. So for me, one of my favorite comedian's memoirs I've ever read is I'd Like to Play Alone, Please by Tom Segura. Hilarious, introspective, very, very smart, very, very fun. And this one, me and my husband actually listened to it together while driving to a campsite. So I think that's also a very good use case for a comedian's memoir, keeping you entertained while you're driving to wherever you're gonna go. And then I think, like I said, if you have a niche kind of nonfiction interest, I think that works very well too. I love history, so something like Dan Carlin's The End Is Always Near would be a very good pick for me, but I can't really say, you know, for the general populace, whatever your hyper-specific interest is, a quick little nonfiction about it I think would fit in very well in a camping mindset. Next up, I have thriller/horror, which is not a super red genre for me, but I do enjoy a good kind of adrenaline read every once in a while, and I think this next one, again, would be perfect for a camping read, and actually was one of my camping reads last year, and that is Pines by Blake Crouch. A FBI officer wakes up in this strange little town in Idaho, not remembering anything of what had happened, who he was, what's going on. So you're following him kind of slowly putting these pieces together, trying to figure out what happened, why he's here, and the whole town's just kind of weird and off, and it's a small town in Idaho, totally forested in, mountains in the background, probably mountains like these ones. Oh, you can't even see the mountains. You can kind of see the mountains there. It's very foggy, but probably very similar to the vibe of which I am camping in right now. Don't go down there. You don't need to go to the water. So I think this, again, would make an excellent, excellent read while you're out camping. This is definitely more on the thriller than horror side, but it will definitely get your blood pumping at parts. And my honorary mention for this one is Thunderhead by Preston and Child. I didn't read this one while camping, but I read it during the summertime, and I was outside in the middle of the day, surrounded by friends, and It scared me while I was reading it. But this is probably one of the longer ones I'm going to mention today, and so that kind of puts it into honorary mention category. I think it's like almost 500, I think it's over 500 pages. It's a chunky boy, but I guess maybe if you're going on a longer camping trip or a couple camping trips in a row, you could chunk up your time with this. But this is another archaeology one. Like I said, I love me some archaeology. The next category I have is mystery. Again, this is kind of one where you can just kind of insert whatever works for you. But I think just a fun Agatha Christie type mystery is a perfect read for camping. So if you like Agatha Christie, insert here. One mystery I read recently that I just adored and thought was so fun was Mastering the Art of French Murder. Not super camping vibes, but just the fact that it's fun and light and just a good time, I think really fits in. My honorary mention here is Old Bones by Preston and Child. More archaeology nonsense. I don't know what it is about archaeology, but I think it just really fits a summer vibe and just makes for a really fun plot. Next up, we have the genre where I think it's easiest to fit in any book basically in this genre as a camping read, and that is romance. Again, any fun, fluffy, short romance that you want to read, plug it in as your recommendation. But one I really enjoyed and think would make a really fun time is One to Watch. Not much camping vibes, but it does have a very summery feel. One to Watch is about a plus-size woman who gets asked to be the bachelorette on a bachelor type show. I can't remember what it's all called, but she made a big tirade on her fashion blog about how all of the bachelors and bachelorettes on seasons prior had been very similar looking, very white, very slim, and very pretty. So she was on this blog post asking for more diversity in casting, and the show decided to reach out to her specifically and have her be the new lead of this dating show. It's very much set up exactly like The Bachelor. They do all the traveling things and do all the crazy experiences, which I think makes for kind of a fun, summery read. And I think it fits in with these themes very well. It's short and it's fun and it's light and it's not too serious. I mean, obviously there are some mentions of fat phobia and, you know, dealing with your own confidence, but nothing gets too heavy that it's gonna like bring your mood down while you're out in the woods. And then my final genre for this video is sci-fi. This one was kind of a no-brainer for me based on my criteria. I think you gotta go with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's just so fun and so light and so nonsense. Maybe don't read this one in the hammock because you might end up laughing too hard and like falling out of your hammock. It involves kind of that traveling element, trying new things in new places, experiencing stuff you don't experience on a normal day. And I think it would be a perfect fit. And I guess if you haven't heard of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, especially read it because it's a classic. It's a classic. You don't need to know anything about it. Just read it. It's a silly, goofy, fun time. My honorary mention for this category is A History of What Comes Next. It's weird. It's very weird. It's about this alien duo who's been on the Earth since pre-civilization, and it's a mother-daughter duo, and it's their job to help mankind develop the technology to be able to leave the Earth. And so it is kooky and you don't know what's going on, but it's a very good time and very well researched. And I guess this could have gone into like historical fiction as well, but I think like kind of the alien element brings some kind of sci-fi stuff. Don't really quite know where this one goes, but it's an honorable mention, so it's not too serious. So those are some books I recommend you bring along on your next camping trip. Please comment down below if you have read any of these or if you have more recommendations for people while they're out enjoying nature. And thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.